Hello, my name is Sheena with Rise Wellness, and today is New Year's Eve. And I thought there is no better time to talk about the final gene in the gene keys, the 64th gene, the last hexagram in the I Ching, than today. This is the shadow of confusion. This is the gift of imagination, and this is the highest destiny path or Siddhi of illumination. I can hear the fireworks in the background illuminating the sky. So this transformational path is such a unique one, such an interesting one. In fact, Richard Rudd says that you could take the I Ching and condense it into the bookends, the first and second genes and the 63rd and the 64th, and you would get the magnificence of life. It would contain everything in those four genes. And what's so interesting is that both Richard Rudd and myself have these as our prime gifts. And the 63rd gene is the shadow of doubt, the gift of inquiry, and the highest expression or Siddhi of truth. So the 63rd and the 64th make really interesting programming partners, which is what they are. The physiology behind the 64th gene is the pineal gland, the third eye. This is the artist. So the 63rd is all about thinking and logic. And the 64th is all about feeling and expression. It's way more abstract. This is the archetype of the artist. So it's so interesting, I find that every time that I talk about this gene, I could say so many different things, because this is the spiritual awakening. This is the path to enlightenment. This is breaking free from the matrix. Confusion is that the swirling atoms before the Big Bang. Confusion is the caterpillar in the cocoon. It's lost its legs. It doesn't know what's on the other side. The gift that awaits it. And so the transmission of this gene takes time. Takes time for contemplation. Takes time the way our body takes time through digestion to absorb the nutrients and fire them off in our body where we need them. This gene needs that same time to feel. The repressed nature of this gene is imitation. This is the copycat. This is the person who has a story to tell but doesn't share their own. They share somebody else's. So it stays repressed. The reactive nature of this gene is confused. This is the cycle of the abused becoming the abuser. So this is, as an example, the guy who's working the daily grind, achieving somebody else's dreams, working for the big man, corporate company, corporate America, and feels taken advantage of at work. Feels like he's living someone else's dreams for that salary. Is not feeling appreciated at his job, feels abused. And he comes home and he projects all of that on his family, his spouse, his children, his neighbors. He might, in fact, be abusive. Or he's just emotionally dumping on to others. The abuse that he gets, he's now dumping on other people. And then that person now has all of this low vibrational energy that may get dumped on somebody else. And this perpetuates the cycle of how the abused becomes the abuser. What I keep thinking about with this gene is you can't think your way out of a feeling problem. You simply have to feel it. So the transmission of this gene comes through a number of ways, of course, they always do. But I find a really helpful one in this is meditation and yoga. Because meditation allows us to control our thoughts. It invites us to notice them come and peacefully detach from them. Let them go, like waves cresting on the sand and then slowly going back out into the ocean. We notice them come and then we peacefully detach from them and we let them go. In yoga, a lot of yoga teachers that I respect and admire will ask you to notice what's happening in your body. You'll do this through meditation a lot of times too, is notice the sensations that arise in your body. Can you sit with them? Can you feel them? Can you identify them? I've been listening to some podcasts from Brene Brown recently, who just put out a new book called Atlas of the Heart. And what I think is so groundbreaking about it is that she gives identification and language to emotions, which I think is going to be such a major, amazing tool in our ability to connect with others. Because in her research, she found most adults can only identify 3 emotions: happy, sad, mad. There's so much more than that. And we might shut down an entire connection with our loved one if we just say we're mad. You know, that might trigger something inside of them, like, oh gosh, in my house, mad looks like slamming drawers and smashing dishes and loud voices and punching the walls or each other. And you know, so that might shut down a conversation really fast if someone calls you and says, I am so pissed. Can I talk to you about it? And you're thinking they're all charged up and you're like, ooh, maybe not. I can't. I don't want this. I don't want this. It's too much. And you shut down. You repress. And now think about what that does on a collective level when we only have 3 ways to identify our emotions. And not everyone can handle them. We lose our ability to connect with others. So I'm really happy that a book like this has come out. I'm also staying in the lane of the gene keys, where I recognize what I've learned from these, and we can't always identify or put language to all of our feelings. Or if we do, that's not the full catharsis process. Feeling them is the catharsis. Feeling them all the way through to the other side. Now, what's interesting about this shadow is that since we were little, we've had a collective frequency of these low vibrations around fear, around scarcity, around how do we stay comfortable? What do we do to stay comfortable and safe? And this brain we have, as magnificent as it is, its job is to keep us safe. So it imitates, it copies what our parents did, what their parents did, what our teachers are doing, what our peers are doing, because that keeps us comfortable, keeps us feeling safe, gives us a false illusion of safety. And that's all that it is. It's a false illusion. It's not real. And then we have the pineal gland that gives us these visions that there's a different way. We can break free from the normalcy that we were born into. We can strip off these social conditions, these ancestral wounds. We can detach from their way of thinking and not adopt it as our own. And this comes through the gift of imagination. But imagination takes work. It takes action. This gene takes action. Because just sitting there and making a vision board, that's coming from your shadow place. Now, printing off your vision board or putting in a location and looking at it every day and feeling the feelings of having everything that's on that board, that is a step in the right direction. That is manifestation. That is imagination at work in action. The root of manifestation, the prefix, imagination, magic. This is the codon ring of alchemy, is the 64th gene, and the 63rd gene is programming partner. And what is alchemy? But the magical process of creation, of transformation. The confusion is, like I said, the spiraling atoms about to create the universe. Imagination is the vision that wants to create something new. It's amazing. You are so divinely talented and creative. And most of us have repressed it and stuffed it down somewhere to be part of the status quo. And this reactive nature wants to retaliate against the status quo. And that's the conundrum that it's in. Confusion paves way to imagination. Imagination paves the way for transformation, for creation. And what is creation but manipulating matter? The same prefix. Manifestation, magic, imagination, all comes from that manipulating matter. What you're here to do, what you've literally been called to do, your 1 in a trillion chance of coming to a human body is to create. And yet what we seldom do is give birth to our ideas. So often we do our keeping up with the Joneses act of doing what others do, imitating. And that's so low vibrational when you stop and you think about it. So once you start contemplating the questions, the 63rd programming partner is inquiry. And you ask, what am I here for? What is my divine destiny? What have I been called to do? How can I serve others? How can I serve the world? That's when you start getting the wheels in motion. And what we come to learn about with confusion is you can't think your way out of a feeling. You just have to feel it. Our neurons are fueled by thoughts. Our neurons, once starved, don't create thought. The absence of thought paves the way for the vision. The vision comes from the imagination. The imagination births the creation. The birth of Christ, the story of Christ. The parable of Christ is the birth of an idea. The birth of Christ is manifestation in action. So what happens is, because we do have such this collective frequency of low vibrational energy, we become the black sheep when we step out of the matrix. And we might be the town lunatic from the perspective of a lot of people who are unwilling or incapable of putting action to their visions, and they'd rather stay quiet, stay small, live someone else's dream, share other people's limiting beliefs as their own. And we're all invited to have these transformative experiences throughout our life, and typically they come from the cataclysmic events like the Big Bang. And we keep having these opportunities to evolve, expand our DNA, or retract, contract, repress, abandon our vision to do something different. The choice is always yours. In Richard Rudd's gene key teaching of this gene, he uses the example of the Eiffel Tower. And I think it's a great example of one day some guy in Paris had this idea that he was going to put a giant chunk of metal right in the middle of the city, an art installation. And a few decades later, this is the most iconic symbol in Paris. You can't think about France without thinking of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And it was nothing more than an artist's expression of whatever emotion he was experiencing. He evoked it through this art tower, this metal installation, this piece of art in the middle of the city. And I bet you when he first had the vision and had the idea and he reached out to others, they probably said, "That sounds crazy, maybe don't do that." And how often do you have an idea and that's the response that you get is, oh, you want to quit your job and start your own business in this market? This time of year? In this location? Are you sure about that? That doesn't sound like the safest option. That doesn't sound like the smartest choice. And that's what happens, is our friends want to keep us comfortable and safe. And so when we have these radical ideas, they often get shut down because most of our general population is doing the comfortable thing. So this gene invites you to take action on your visions and do something different and be open to whatever that vision unfolds as. So I'll give you just a kind of interesting example from my life. Was last winter, I had a vision, and this vision was owning and operating a yoga studio and an apothecary that would be attached to one another within the same dwelling. And the apothecary would have all these holistic wellness products, and the yoga studio, when it wasn't teaching yoga, would have all of these classes and workshops and healing modalities. And I wrote it down on paper, and then I tucked it away, and I didn't think about it for several months. And then one day, I was having just this confusing thought of, what am I doing? What should I be doing? And that vision popped in my head again of that yoga studio and that apothecary. And so in that moment, I decided to do a Google search. And I went on to see, are there any apothecaries in Sarasota where I had just moved to? And I figured, well, I might as well see if there's a niche here. Might as well see for myself if it's been done, if it's successful, what it looks like. And so for me, all it was an apothecary. And I drove right to the location. The first apothecary that pulled up had great reviews. And once I got there, wouldn't you know, it was an apothecary with a yoga studio attached to it. The yoga studio does classes and events and workshops when they're not holding yoga classes there. Mind blown. And I walk in, and this really sweet member of their team walks over and asks me if I would like a cup of tea. And I'm like, hell yeah, I will sip and savor this experience. And then as I'm walking around, and visually it's so aesthetically pleasing. There's all these oracle cards that are out that you can pull yours. So I'm sipping, I'm touching, I'm seeing these beautiful things. They've got this really nice music playing in the background. I'm hearing it. And then they have an intuitive, clairvoyant tarot card reader on site to give tarot readings, to engage. Literally all my senses are going off, and I'm like amazed at this place. It's better than what I had envisioned for myself. It's better than what I could have done. And that's why you got to be flexible sometimes with the visions. Is my vision was to own and operate this place. And then I did nothing to it. Did no activity. I kept that manifestation tucked away. And months later, when that vision resurfaced, I thought, I've got to act on this. I've got to do something about this. And when I drove to the place and I had this incredible experience, I signed up for my first workshop, and I've been back to that place literally once a week, if not more than that, ever since that happened several months ago. That vision turned into my spiritual journey, turned into many breakthroughs and moments of awakenings. And there's no way in hell I'm going to sit here and say that I'm this enlightened, awakened person. But I am on my path, and I have evolved much more on that path because of that vision that I put to action to drive to this place, to see it unfold in a way that I hadn't even imagined for myself. Someone else was the artist that expressed this passion for spiritual healing and holistic wellness. And now I get to reap all the benefits of enjoying it. And how amazing is that? So, yes, start with the vision board. Start with the visions. Create them, paint them, print them. Put these visions somewhere that you see them, that you feel them, and take the time to feel them. Take the time to meditate. Meditation can be a walking meditation in nature. It can be listening to frequencies. It can be listening to a guide bring you into a place, into a feeling. Move your body, express yourself. The archetype of this gene is the artist, but that doesn't mean quit your job and be a painter. It's deeper than that. These hologenetic profiles that you get will show you your life's path and the journey to your creative expression of these genes, but there's so much more than that. It's your own journey, and you're going to digest this information and contemplate it and come to it however you want to. It's just a guide. It's just an outline. This gene invites you to express yourself in some way or another, but get it out there. Own your story. Share your art. You didn't come here to live someone else's story. You didn't come here to imitate your parents' life, your grandparents' life. You didn't have a 1 in 1 trillion chance of being in a human body not to use your senses and the parts of you that have been gifted. Maybe it's fingers and toes. Maybe it's your mouth, your voice. Who knows what it is? There's so many ways that you manifest your gifts. We're all clairvoyant when we tap into the gift of our visions. We can all manifest. We can all create a life of abundance. We don't have to stay on a collective shadow frequency just because it's around us. Absolutely not. You can break free from the matrix at any time. Stagnation is the antithesis of imagination. Your mind doesn't want to be on this confusing loop of thoughts. It really doesn't. It would much rather give way to your creative voice, your imagination, your visions. It's fueled by your thoughts. It's made reality by your visions, put to actions, put to work. So, as you celebrate the last day of the year, I invite you to offer yourself time and patience and compassion, and offer yourself the knowing that you're capable of everything. If you have the vision, it's because you're capable of accomplishing it, whatever it is. It might be something small. It might be a new car. It might be something major like a huge move to another country, or starting or ending a relationship, or a career, a business, whatever. But it's through the action of doing something with that vision that you take on the transformational path all the way to the gift of illumination, to the highest destiny path of illumination. We are made of love and light, and we don't even know how to capture that in language. And that is what makes the 64th gene so special, is that it's so abstract that there is no language for it. We might find a way to identify our emotions and create an easier way to communicate and connect with others, but we can't eliminate the feeling process, because that is part of the magic. That is how these miracles happen. You can actually take the quantum leap into spiritual enlightenment through this gene. And what did we say about this gene? But it's the bookends of the entire I Ching. It is made up of all the other genes. So I invite you to take action, to do something about living the life of your dreams. If you can see it, believe it, you can achieve it. It's not just a bumper sticker. It's real, and it's real for a reason. And if you are having a radical, bold thought, and it gets squashed when you say it out loud to your circle of friends, don't be disheartened. Think of the first person that went to space, or flew in an airplane, or took an elevator, or built a skyscraper. They were all just visions at the beginning, and they were birthed into creation through radical moves, thinking thoughts that nobody else had, and doing something manifesting them, birthing them into creation. That's what you're here for. If you're watching this on New Year's, Happy New Year's. I wish all your dreams and hopes come true. And if you're not, happy new breath, happy new moment, happy fresh day, happy new awareness. Illumination. We know those people that radiate. We've met those people that have the inner glow. It's too hard to explain. I could try forever, but it would take hours. I can think of two people off the top of my head, Lori and Marie. These are two people that I see their glow project out of them in everything that they do. And wouldn't you know that they're artists? Of course they are. One works with watercolors and acrylics and oils and clay, and the other owns a vintage boutique store. She evokes emotion through wearable art, through fashion, through recycled fashion, upcycled fashion, giving new life to an old story, to an old garment, and reconstructing it into something new. Both of these people are living the highest expression of this gene. And I see in their presence, I feel it in their aura. I see them glowing, and it's so empowering to watch. It's so inspirational to see. You know, that Richard Rudd will say that the Siddhic state of illumination, this gene, is hearing God's thoughts, thinking God's thoughts. How divine. To see God in another is to see you. We are all made of matter. We are magic. We use our imagination to manifest and manipulate matter. That's what we're here for. We can't always be confined to our six senses because we're so much more than that. The Zen teachers, the Zen story of the Buddha gives an entire sermon that's wordless. Just puts a flower out there and everyone just sits there. And only one man smiles. Through that wordless sermon, he reached enlightenment by way of that flower, giving birth to Zen Buddhism. Richard Rudd tells this story in the 36th gene key, actually. And I didn't share the story then, but I've decided to share my interpretation of the story in this gene because this gene is about abstraction, about emotion, about art and expression. And language isn't the pathway to this. The transmission of cities come through the silence between the words, and a great teacher can make a lesson out of anything. And so, of course, there's so many Buddhist stories, but the one that he shares that I'm going to share goes something like this. The Buddha is offering his wisdom to his fellowship, and people come up to him to get his blessings. And one man comes up to him and he looks him straight in the eye and says, "Buddha, is there a God?" And Buddha says, no, there's no God. And the man looks at him stunned, confused, shocked, bewildered, crestfallen, and walks away in disappointment. A second man comes to the Buddha. "Buddha, is there a God?" The man looks at him straight in the eyes and says, "Yes, Yes, there is. The man gets cockeyed, eyebrow raised. What? Confused, shocked, bewildered. He walks away, stunned. A third man comes to the Buddha and says, Buddha, is there a God? And looks him straight in the eyes. The Buddha says nothing. After a moment, the man's expressionless face gives way to a huge grin. He walks away, stunned. Later that night, one of the Buddha's disciples come over to him and say, Buddha, I heard those 3 men that came over to you today. They all asked if there was a God, and you gave them 3 different answers. Why did you do that? And Buddha says, well, the first guy believed without a shadow of a doubt that there was a God. He believed in him so much he didn't experience God. So I had to tell him no, so that his whole life would come crashing down. His heart would be shattered open, and he would come to experience God for the first time. The second man, he was a cynic. He thought there's no way there's a God, absolutely not. But he believed in me. He came to me for guidance. So I told him, yes, there is a God. Everything that he thought that he knew was shaken up. His whole heart will shatter and explode for him to come to learn that there is a God, and he will experience God like he would never have experienced God before. The third man, he was right on the fence. He had done a lot of work. He was on the path. He just needed a little nudge. So I gave him the transmission through silence. We get the visions. We don't always share them. And sometimes when we do, they're not received the way that we wished that they would have been. But if we can take the action to make these visions come to life, we can break free from the patterns, the limiting beliefs, the social construct, the status quo, the matrix. We can break through like the caterpillar into a butterfly and evolve into a different way of being. We can invite ourselves to live a more compassionate, enlightened, illuminated, radiant, glowing, artistic, expression-full life. The choice is always yours, and it always will be. The light in me sees and honors the light in you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that might be new and engaging with a concept that might be foreign to you, and allowing yourself to digest and contemplate this information over time. And maybe you listen and you do nothing with it, and that's fine. And maybe you decide to listen and make a vision board, or paint, or sing, or dance, or share a story, tell a joke, create a garden, start or end a relationship or a job, give birth to a new thought, a new creation. However you decide to use this information, it's yours to do whatever you like with. I love you so much. Namaste. Happy New Year. Happy new breath. Happy new moment.